Should be a fun day.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff. We had a lot of stuff to talk about. And today we're going to be, I disassembled everything, including felts and everything from this model so that you all can get a real good idea of like what all those parts looks like. And it looks like this. It's like an IKEA project. Some assembly required. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you kind of all the ins and outs. I mean, we got, I don't know if you could see that very well, but like, look at this guy. I know I'm over exaggerating, but when I took the RPT technical exam, it felt like they had done this to it, just mangled everything. I know they didn't, but in my 16-year-old mind, they might as well have handed me this. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to be able to do all this with just a handful of tools. So let's kind of look at the tools that I have. Obviously, I'm going to need a little bit of tacky glue. So we got some tacky glue right here. We have my pinning kit, my nifty, trusty pinning kit, because we're going to be repinning the flanges. We're going to be repinning the jack flange, the wippen flange, the hammer flange. I think I took all the center pins out. We're going to be replacing felt, cutting felt to fit. I've also got my end nippers right here, my wire benders, and a little razor blade, which I almost cut myself because I couldn't find the actual razor blade knife. But if I cut myself, it'll be just another thing that we get to record and come back to as a highlight of this group. I didn't cut myself. We're still good. All right. Any questions before we get started? I'm going to start by layering all the parts out so that kind of people can see it. And then I'm probably going to start with some of the bigger things like the repinning. Just because that might take a little bit of a time to do all the repinning work. But questions before we get started? No, everybody's ready to go. Everybody is ready to go. So just so you all know that in the RPT exams, that's the Registered Piano Technician exams, you're going to have an action model like this times 3. So there's going to be a 3-note action model, same, and you've all seen me use the grand action model with 3 notes. We actually have a half a dozen 3-note upright action models for when we do live in-persons. Am I allowed to say that? I'm allowed to say that. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah, so it's said, so we can say it. I think we've said it before, but yeah, we actually got the actions now, so it's closer.
But at least for today's training, we're going to kind of look at this and just see like, okay, what is this missing? So obviously it's missing a bunch of action parts, but what else is this missing that you all can see? Go ahead and shout it out as you see it.
No punchings, no back rail felt.
No back rail felt, yes. No punchings.
No keys.
We're actually missing back end key felt right here, the rest felt, and actually right here as well. You're right. We're also missing the felt for the hammer rail rail right here. That's missing felt. Obviously, the action parts. We're actually missing felt along this spring rail as well. So we have a lot of felt to replace on this. And what I'll probably do is start with the action parts, but I wanted you to get a feel for how kind of stripped down let's call it the frame is.
So on the model, David,
yeah.
So essentially, normally we would have the action assembly with the metal rails and stuff. That would be essentially what your right hand is close to, right? Where that normally would be the rail assembly that you would take out from the action.
Correct. In the new models that are coming to us, you're going to see that they actually have a rail, just like action brackets and everything. Kind of like that grand action has both sides of the rails. So everything comes off and you really get a good idea. It also actually has the pedal assembly as well to regulate all the pedals. So it's a pretty high-end model, and we're excited to show you it that way. If any of you are wanting to take the RPT exams, you're already going to kind of be familiar with these. And we'll probably do one of these videos where we'll actually do a mock-up where I'm like, here's literally what you could expect. But right now, this is way over and above. You're not going to have a technician unless they are crazy take apart the action like this and make you clean it up and make it work. So for this purposes, we're just going crazy with it. For whatever reason, I thought, let's just start with the hammer. Now, in the RPT exams, they're actually going to have a modern hammer like this. So instead of having like an old school hammer return spring, they're going to have the butt with the spring already included. The nice thing about this is that spring is going to just hook on to the cord on the flange. That being said, we still need to go ahead and put a pin in this one. So we got to do that. We also have the wippen right here, and it's missing a couple things. One is the wippen flange needs to be repinned, as well as the jack flange needs to be repinned. So I got the jack right here. Let's go ahead and put this. We also have right here, we have the damper lever and the damper lever flange. And somebody bent this nice and out of shape. So we'll have to bend that back as well. Whoever did this is such a jerk. It's a glutton for punishment. So let me go ahead. Since a lot of this is going to be done right here, I'm going to see if I can get a little bit better light. That way we can have just an easier workstation. Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and get my pinning tools. And I went over this, I think, last week, and this is kind of what I would carry into a customer's house. Again, you're never going to come to a piano that needs all of this in one service call, but we're going to attack it anyways. So can anybody remind me, in general, what the kind of pin size is that typically we are putting in these flanges? Does anybody remember that? Again, size 19 through roughly 22. What size is a good average and is typically what we see?
I want to say
Yeah,
20.
Victor for the win, 21, which means if I'm going to be using this reaming technique, what pin will I put in here? If I'm going to put in a 21, what size pin am I going to put in this guy?
22.
If I put a 22 in there, it would make it too reamed out, and it would be too loose.
Also one less, my bad.
Yep, you got it. So it'd be a 20. Andy, you're right. So if we're going to do a 21, we're going to do a 20 size pin. And it looks like I am out of 21s or 20. And so we're going to do a 20 and a half, which means we'll probably ream it out and we'll put a 20 and a half pin size in there. This is the first time I've ever used this particular one. So I'm just getting it ready. Just so you all know, these are double-sided. And so I'm getting the smaller size so it'll actually hold on to the pin itself. You know what I should do? I should have the company pay for like a, what do they call it? A mani-pedi, so that you guys don't have to look at my gross like finger nails and stuff. So what I'm doing right here is I put that pin inside and I'm just gnarling it up. I'm just kind of going through and just kind of roughing it up. I'm not going too intense. Like I'm not really crimping down too hard, but as you can see, I've made it just, I've gnarled it up. So now there's some abrasions there. And I only really want about ½ an inch poking out. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this back up, push this down in there. So I have a roughly ½ an inch poking out there. So this is ready to go. So we're going to start with the hammer flange. typically what you would probably do before I did all this is actually measure it to be like, hey, is a 21.5 actually going to go in there? Or do I have a 21.5? I have one. So let's go ahead and look at this. Now, this is a different type of flange system. So this butt actually has a tongue that goes over that. And that's this little metal piece that goes over it like so that you tighten down. So we're not pushing a pin through a bird's eye in modern hammer butts. Does that make sense? Typically what we would do is put the pin through and we would press it through the bird's eye. But in this case, it's just going to clamp down on it. So with that being the case, I'm good to go. I'm just going to go ahead and ream it out to the point where I can gently push that pin in with really no resistance. I usually do it like 5 or 6 full spins. I always go I always go clockwise. For whatever reason, that's just how I've always done it. You can go either way, just make sure it's consistent. So it's definitely getting close. I'm probably going to gnarl this up a little bit more moving forward, just because it's not taking off quite enough. It shouldn't take this many passes. Now, the thing to remember in putting these on there, and I've done this so many times, once I went through like almost an entire action where I put these back on and I put it backwards. You need to make sure that this cord goes and sits right here like that. So again, I kind of went like that way, and it wouldn't even go on the rail, and I cried for half an hour, and then I tried to fix it, and I had to redo everything. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the pin in. It feels good. These nippers, by the way, are just on Amazon, and they work really pretty well. You get like 3 for $15, so they're really good at a really good price point. So now that I've got this pin in, I'm going to go ahead and put on the tongue for the hammer butt. And so that's just simply the little nickel tongue right there and this little screw. Whoa. Let's make sure that I have the right screw. Yes, I do. Questions so far? Again, a lot of times it's the setup that takes a little bit of the longest to kind of get the pins and everything ready. But once we have this going, it should go fairly quickly. So I went ahead and put that tongue on there. Where am I at? Right there. Now I'm just going to tighten it down, leaving it kind of loose because we want to go ahead and insert that flange in there. So there we go. A simple test you can do is just make sure it flaps. And it's working pretty good. So one down. Let's go ahead and do the wippen assembly right now. I like to just make sure that jack, I know there's a gram weight for it. Michael, you probably would know what it is with the little tab. I just make sure there's really no friction in it when I pin it. And so what I'll do is I'm going to use, boy, I don't know what happened, if like I just like repinned a whole action or whatnot, but there's like hardly any center pins. So hold on just a second. There we go. The benefits of having a shop. You just have everything at your disposal. So I'm going to go ahead and start reaming out this jack flange right here. Again, questions, go ahead and ask questions along the way if you have any. Or type them out and Stacy will read them. But I'm going through just reaming this out. Again, just like with the other flange, you want to make sure it's in the right direction. You don't want to go this way with it. You want to make sure that that is actually going to sit on the spring itself. Put a size 21 pin in there. And I'm also really making sure that I'm getting it through the bird's eye hole of that jack, because we don't want to use our pin push and pop out that bushing. Then that makes the job like 10 times longer and more labor intensive. So I can feel right now there's a little bit of friction. So what I'm going to do is just kind of massage that a little bit so that it kind of massages that felt where the pin is and it gets it just right. Everything that I'm showing you so far is in the RPT exams, in just that you will have to know how to repin flanges. You will not be made to repin all of these flanges, but you will need to know how to repin a flange. Usually it's a hammer flange that they have you do. And yes, you will bring your own, that's a good question. You will bring your own felt, glue,
all tools,
center pins, and things of that nature.
Yeah, one recommendation that I heard is that you create mini boxes for each repair job that you need to do.
That is 100%, Michael. What I did is I actually had a tackle box with like 5 layers, and every layer was the different repair. So in the top layer was the key bushing, in the second layer was the repinning, and the third layer was the hammer replacement, things of that nature. But that's 100%.
One thing that they talked about is, just get little mini boxes that you can get, even just mini plastic storage boxes, because you have to lay out all your tools.
Yeah.
To show them all your tools, if I remember right, is what they said.
they've never had to see my tools, but this was, I don't know, 20 years ago. So it might have changed since.
Or at least they have to know that the tools that you're going to use are right in front of you or something like that.
Oh, okay. I could see that. So we went ahead and replaced this jack. It's moving freely. No issues there. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on to this wippen flange, doing the same process. So one of the things I need to show you all, and I don't think I've really talked about this, again, making sure that the flange is in the right orientation. Always make sure that it's going to bolt on where you need it to bolt on when you're done. But one of the things I need to show you is the test, because what you could have is, wow, the flange is repinned. It's definitely not too tight, but it could be too loose. And I'll show you the test, which they actually do. It's called the rocker test, to see if the actual pinning was done correctly. So right there, that, for whatever reason, that flange right there is still, the center pin that I used was still too loose in the bird's eye. So I'm actually going to put a 21 in there. Instead of going through and doing any more with this and getting a bit different pin size, since I'm moving up a pin size, I'm just going to kind of ream it out a little bit more and be a little bit more aggressive with it to take off a little bit of that extra bushing. And after I'm done with this, I'll show you the test to go ahead and make sure that the center pinning, or the pinning that you did, is not too loose. And so this is fitting just right. Remember how I said there's the test where you can drop a yeah, it's a little snug, but for this, it's going to be fine. Sorry, let me show you. You can drop a screw in there. And so just by kind of tapping it, it's going down ever so slightly. So I'm going to call that good. But the thing I wanted to show you is this right here. So we repinned this guy, and it's definitely not too tight now. The question is it too loose? So what you do, and what they do to test this, is you put it on the edge of, let's do this. You put it, I'm going to do this, at the edge of the table right here, and you press down on it on the flange. So what we're doing is we're pressing this flange against the table and then feeling if this is going up and down. And so right now, there's a lot of wobble. Why is there so much wobble? It's either going to be the pinning, or it may be that I didn't tighten this tongue down all the way. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that it's the tongue not being tightened. And sure enough, that's what it was. I just tightened this tongue down, and now it's nice and tight. So now it's not rocking at all. But you see that? That's a good way to test yourself, to make sure that it's loose enough, but not too loose to where it's rocking in the bird's eye or in the flange. All right. Since I'm right here with this crazy bent wippen, I'm just going to go ahead and straighten this out. Now, this is something that they did. They did bend the wippen on my action crazy. And I looked at the guy, like when I went to it, he kind of had this like funny look in his eye, like, ha, 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 ha. And it was kind of a joke, but I was like super stressing because like, well, what if I don't bend it the right way? What if it's, whatever, but it worked out fine. So what I did is I just kind of bent both these wires, the back catch wire and then the bridle wire to more they're a straight position. We've gone ahead and repinned the jack flange as well as the wippen flange right there. So in theory, this is all set to go. Hammer's done, wippen's done. Now we're on to the damper lever. This is another one where this is like crazy bent. They didn't really bend this one crazy. And by the way, they're not going to leave it in this rough state. They're not going to take the damper felt off and stuff like that, like I did. It's not going to be that intense. And again, once we get those action models, the upright ones, we'll show you just exactly what was on mine, as at least to the best I can remember. So same process. I'm going to go ahead and ream this out just a little bit. And right now I can feel that this tool is going right in. So it tells me this pin size may be a little bit larger than a 21.5. So what I'm going to do is test it in the bird's eye right here. And sure enough, I can push this pin all the way through, which we don't want. I can push that through with my finger. So that's how you know you need to go up a size. So I'm going to go size 22 on this guy. I'm going to test it out. I can get it started, but I can't push it all the way through, so I know that that's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and test that pin inside the flange because it was already with that 21.5 going through pretty easily, and it's close. I'm seeing a bunch of comments. Stacy, is there any questions in there that I need to?
Michael's basically moderating and answering everyone's questions today, so
perfect.
We haven't.
That's what we like.
But we're in territory that I know. So as soon as we run out of the territory that I know, then we'll move on.
Oh.
No.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So while I have this out, I need to show you that this is another source of a weird squeak. And that is, okay, so I repin this. It's all good to go. I moved the spring out so I can go ahead and just, yep, it's moving just right. But right here, where this spring goes is a source for creaks sometimes. And so there's several things that you can do. One is get some A-graph and put that in there and coat it. Another thing you can do is get that tuba lube and put a little squidge of, is that a word, of that product right here. And it allows this spring to move back and forth and not make any sound. So I've gone into customers' houses and this is the issue where we go and use the damper lever, the damper pedal, and all of them make this kind of creak. A lot of Yamahas will have this. And so it's this wood to metal. Again, you have the metal spring touching the wood, and that can create a lot of sound. All right. So we've gone through and done all of our repinning. I would say that's the most difficult part of doing this right now. And so what we can do now is go ahead and get our frame, our action frame right here, and start figuring out what's next. I think for this, I want to go ahead and move towards the key itself. And so obviously we're going to be adding some punchings. Luckily I grabbed some punchings right here. And so I'm just going to put, because Wednesday, we're going to be regulating this, but I'm just going to put one single balance rail punching on it. I'm going to be putting had another punching, but I'm just going to be putting that cardboard on there right now. So at least there's something. The next thing I'm going to do is use the actual back rail cloth. And there's a couple different ones that I can choose from. And for this one, I kind of want to go with a little bit thicker because it originally had something that was a little thicker. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to use this one. Did it get like really red all of a sudden there? That was weird. Let me go ahead and add this. There we go. So what I'm going to do is add that, and this is the back rail, the key. Should be. The key rest rail felt right here, and that's where that goes. So I'm going to use my glue, but first I'm going to use my you know what? I'm going to be safe about it. I'm going to use my scissors right here. I'm not going to try to use that janky, razor blade. So I'm just going to cut this flush. So right there. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to use my tacky glue. And again, that PVCE glue that Janice uses is great. I think you can get that at Howard Industries. Oh, by the way, oh my goodness. I had a talk with Chef. I called them, said, hey, what's the deal? What's the deal? And they said, I'm sorry. I talked to one of their head people. He gave me his email address and say, hey, moving forward, have them send it to me. You can CC either you or Stacy or our school on that as well, and they'll get you set up right away. And so I will go ahead and after this is done, send his email to Stacy. That way we can kind of make this happen. But if you always just CC us, they'll make sure to get it taken care of. And so he was mortified. It was really cool. I think his name is Josh. And there was a person that you work with, Michael. And he was just super cool to work with. And it was great.
Yeah, each time that I've talked to him, he's been great. So I'm glad you were able to get a hold of him and he helped you out.
Totally. He was so down to earth and chill about it.
That means everyone's going to get Chef accounts now if they want them. Yay! I always feel bad giving Chef links. And then I'm like, some of these people can't, like when some of you can't.
I know.
I'm like, gosh, I feel kind of bad. Like it doesn't feel right. So that's great.
So I went ahead and just added that key felt right there. Oh, look at that. We're missing something. What are we missing from this? Anybody?
Capstan.
Anybody? Capstan. Capstan. Yes. Thank you. So luckily we have the capstan right here. It was actually broken. So while I had it off, I went and glued it. So I'm just going to add this capstan right here. Just so you know, there's two tools to adjust these barrel capstans. There's obviously kind of that rat tail capstan adjuster that you stick in these holes. But there's another tool that looks like a set of pliers that have like these, at the end of them as two kind of round pieces at the head, and those grip it. And those are great because they don't accidentally break them. So I don't actually think I have. Let me go just check really quick. I'm going to show you an example of it. I have it. Yes, I do. Sick. These guys. Have you seen these before? That's what these are for. They allow you to kind of hold on to this guy and safely do this. Now, I would say it is worth getting these, but if nothing else, it's faster. You don't have to go through and kind of find the holes and put the little rat tail thing in there. You just simply go like this. Boop, 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 boop. And a lot of times, I mean, time is money, y'all. We want to go ahead and be efficient with our time. And so I would go ahead and look into these, if nothing else, not for the safety of not breaking the capstans, but more just the time saver.
What's that called again, David?
It's called a flimming gym. I have no idea.
Oh, I was like,
I have no idea. It's probably a capstan adjusting pliers.
I'll find it.
If I had to guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start name them like Dr. Seuss names. That's what I'm gonna start doing. All right, so we got the key in there. Everything's drying. We at least kind of are back to square one and to some degree. Oh, wow, somebody already found it. Victor, nice. Part number 290. I wonder how much they cost. I'm going to say $25. Whoever gets closest has to buy one for everyone. $42? Is that how much it really costs, Victor? Jeez. We're in the wrong biz.
Yeah, but that sounds pretty. Those I've never seen those. Those seem pretty nice. I hate the.
Yeah.
I mean, having.
We'll save you time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've done this. I want to go ahead and put on some of the other felt now. And so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to go like that. So what I'm going to do now is actually glue on the hammer rest rail felt. So I had some of this nice and it's a bit spongier. Just so everybody knows, you want to use a little bit spongier material on these upright rest rails. Why? Anybody guess?
So they don't thump when it goes back?
Boom! You're right, Janice. Exactly. They don't make a thunk thump sound. And so I usually use a little bit more of a softer material there. You don't want it to be super soft in this key rest rail because that's going to compress otherwise. So make sure you're not using a super spongy material right there. Put a little bit spongier material for this. I also had a little bit denser material for the, this is funny because it is a hammer return rail, spring rail, but it doesn't have any hammer springs, return springs. So it's just there for this action model, whatever. It's probably there for stability, actually, now that I think about it, between the bracket rails. It's probably what it's still there for. But I'm using my tacky glue. I'm just going to put a little bead of it. And I'm going to go ahead and put this felt on there. Call it good. Sweet. All right, so I think I have all of that good to go. Since I have everything out, I think what I want to do next is actually put in what goes right here, y'all. What is this rail right here called, by the way? What is this rail right here called? Come on. Everybody's like looking.
It's the let down button.
Let off rail.
Let off.
Yes. Rail. You know what we should do is we should have prizes. We should get to the point where we have prizes, where we have like a question every time and like, oh, wow. You have like a leaderboard. So yeah, it's a let off rail. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the let off screw and the let off button next, since I have access to everything. Whoa. And again, you will never have this access because you will never be working on a piano with one note. But hey, we're just learning, so this is fine. Ramses, by the way, I feel like it's been a while since we've seen you. It's welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to finally be here. I've been pretty busy.
Great. That's fantastic. So I'm kind of doing it the old manual way right now, just screwing this down to where it kind of has a little bit popping through the bottom side so I can screw on this button. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and actually put on the wippen assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it through the wippen flange screw. Again, I'm really not worried about measurements and adjusting the parts to their proper spec. We're going to be doing that on Wednesday. And by the way, I'm going to be asking a lot of questions on Wednesday, so come prepared. We're going to be asking, hey, what's key dip? What's let off? How do we get aftertouch? There's not enough aftertouch. What do we need to do? So we're going to be doing a lot of that because it's easiest in just the simplest single key form. All right, so I got my let off. Now I'm going to go ahead and install my wippen assembly. So I got my screw. Let's see if I can kind of, I am so jazzed, by the way, to get these upright action models. for years I've wanted one, and they're like, sorry, we only make them for the PTG, for the RPT exams. We're not going to sell them. There's so much work, and we couldn't even recoup it. For years I bugged them about it. And then all of a sudden one day it was on their website for sale. And I called Dean and I'm like, Dean, I need one. He's like, all right, well, we're only making 12 of them. And like all but 5 of them are spoken for. And we're never making them again because they're too much work. And I'm like, I'll take your last 5. And he's like, what? All right. So then we got 5 of them. And those are going to be my retirement because they're going to accrue in value. Some people get gold. I'm just going to have Rayburn action models as my retirement plan.
Just grab one in a piano store and run away.
Exactly. They don't have the
return
3 keys.
of investment is on that. That'll be interesting.
All right, my whipping's in. Yes. It's got the whipping in. I got to go ahead and attach this jack spring so that we kind of have some jack movement. That's good. I'm feeling right here wobbling back and forth. It's nice and tight. So I know that that pinning was done right. It wasn't too loose because I can just move it left to right and it's nice and tight. So what I'm going to do next, because again, this is easier to do in this stage, I want to go ahead and put this guy on. So I'm going to drape this down and you're going to be able to see how far off it is from where the string is. And so we're going to go ahead and install this lever first, and then we're going to bend it to its proper position. Again, a lot of what I'm showing you is really nothing new, but sometimes it's nice to kind of see somebody do it from start to finish. So this is one of those tasks that you're going to need a long-handled screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, and you kind of thread it down, and from the top, go ahead and remove the screw or tighten the screw back up. Let's go ahead and move this. So one of the things I'm noticing, I'm going to double check this. I'm just kind of looking at the screws that I've used. No, that's right. That's right. This right. Okay. Make sure to keep the screws in the right order, because I was about to put a hammer flange screw in that damper flange, lever flange, and it was not wanting to go in. And just so you know, a lot of modern actions have these metal brackets. Do not force the screw in them. You will be sorry. I have, talking from experience, I'm like, well, it's probably going to thread itself in there if I go a little bit further. Oh, don't do it. Don't do it. By the way, it looks like whoever messed up this action also like messed up my spoon. So we pushed it way far forward. So I'm just pushing that back and out of the way for now. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to this guy. What is this called?
Is that the damper?
Yep.
Felt assembly.
Yeah.
The damper head specifically.
Damper head, that's it.
Yep. So I'm going to put this on and then tighten it down and see how far away from the string we actually are. It's not looking great. But we're pretty far out of there. And we're actually not too far away from the string as I thought we would be. So what I'm going to do here is simply push this to the string to where I get it roughly parallel to the string itself. Then I've already cut some felts right here. And I'm going to use my tacky glue. Again, I'm a big fan of this tacky glue. When it comes to the clear stuff, just throw it out the window. I'm not a fan of that. And I've never been. Yet I still have it. I don't know if it's because I bought bottles years ago and I just have them, or if like for some reason I'm like, oh, it'll be different this time. Just get this kind of tacky glue. Or get the Rue glue, or get Janice's PVC glue. Nice. Okay. There we go. Nothing is working yet, obviously, because we are not working on that today. We are just getting the parts back on this piano action. So the final set, we have a couple more things to do. Actually, really only one thing, because we're not going to be installing the felt for the rest for the blow distance. We're going to do that on Wednesday, where we're actually going to figure out what strike distance. That's not the right term. I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, what blow distance we're going to want for this action. Here's a precursor. What's a standard blow distance for a piano? That is the hammer to string distance. Anybody?
1 inch, 5/8.
1 3/4.
1 inch, 5/8.
Yeah. 3/4 to 5/8.
Nope. Getting close. Oh, who put that 42 millimeter? What is this? Canada? Andy, I'm playing with you. It's actually 1 7/8. As low as 1 3/4. So that's as minimal as you want to get is 1 3/4. Ideally, it's 1 7/8. And that will be the same for uprights and grands. Let's just say hypothetically, your customer is like, hey, I want to play as fast as possible. I want to play fast. I want to play like Horowitz. And you're like, okay, how do I make that happen? That's my question. How do you make that happen? How do you make the piano play as fast as possible? Has anybody been asked that question? And does anybody have an answer for that?
Play on the grand.
Play on the ground. That's good.
Reduce blow distance.
Say one more time.
Reduce the blow distance.
Yes, but in order to do that, what other thing do you have to adjust? You're right. You can't just adjust one or the other. There's three adjustments that work together.
Key dip is one.
Yep.
Blow distance is the other.
Yep.
And the third one is the capstan adjustment.
Let off.
Right. Let off.
Boom.
That's right.
Let off. Okay. So you have Mr. Piano Player Extraordinaire says, I want to play lightning fast. What do? Somebody's just said, I think it was Andy, says, shorten that blow distance. But what are you going to do? If you just did that, what would you run into?
Might bobble them, wouldn't it?
Completely wrong. Yeah.
You would have way too much aftertouch. The jack would escape so far. So what you need to do in order to compensate for that is lessen the key dip.
Key dip.
Yep. So for instance, Horowitz's piano was like set to, I don't know, it was like 1 inch I'm exaggerating, but it was like, let's just say he had 1 inch of blow distance as opposed to nearly 2 inches. Well, that would mean that his dip, instead of being at 10 millimeters, would have to be closer to 5 millimeters. And that way you don't have excess aftertouch. The let off could probably still be the same, although he probably tightened it up to minimal, tolerances. So it just barely let off at the right moment. But those are the kind of things that we as technicians need to learn how to do. And that's why we teach you the fundamentals. We want you to know everything we can about the regulation, about the piano, not so that you know how to do specs, but you know how to work around it. And that's what makes a great technician, is not knowing all the specs. It's knowing the specs and then knowing how you can fudge it to get the piano to play what your customer wants it to play like.
That was a nice thing about the playground, where they had an action model that demonstrated the aftertouch and the effects of the key dip, the effect of the let off, and the effect of the of the blow distance, how those different things would affect each other.
And that's the thing, is I've met a lot of great techs that have been in the industry for a long time, but when it came to manipulating these things, they didn't quite have it. And so they would come to me and just say, hey, well, this is what they want. That's probably not possible. I'm like, well, if you did this, this, and this, you could. And that's why what we like to do, with our education is just from the ground up. Let's simplify everything. And a core principle is always aftertouch. Aftertouch is the core principle, and there's always 3 ways of getting it. And that's what we're going to be doing on Wednesday, is manipulating that. And I'll show you, since we'll have enough time, hey, let's do a 1-inch blow distance and see what we run into. Let's do a 2.5-inch blow distance and see what we have to get in order to get that to play correctly. Because there's no right answer. I mean, there's pianos that don't function properly, but you can fudge everything to where, you know, I've had customers that have outrageous demands and outrageous things that they want because they just wanted to try it. And so with some people, they want a really, really, really deep key dip. If I'm going to do a really deep key dip, what does that also mean?
Deep, large blow distance.
Exactly, Joel. Large blow distance. I've had some where I did 2.5 inches, and I don't know how I was able to get that, but because usually you'll have a hammer rest rail in the grands, or it'll bump up against the wippen felt right there. But I was able to get it, and I hated the way it played. But they came in and they're like, "Yes, it's super chunky." I'm like, "Okay."
But then do you have to come back and fix a bunch of broken hammer shanks, or?
Nope, they loved it. And it was on a concert grand, so they really wanted to lay into it. Just so you know, there's kind of your standard grand pianos. And then when you go into the concert grands, usually people want a deeper key dip, usually around 11 or 12 millimeters is what people like in that concert setting, depending on the voicing and the hall. And eventually we're going to get into more of that kind of stuff. But there's all these little details and tricks that we want to show you to really make it so that you can go into any situation and feel like you're ready to go.
So is there a let off then adjustment per millimeter of key dip? Is there like a ratio there?
You know, I'm sure there is a ratio. I usually go ahead and know the what do you call it? The industry standards. So we know that there's several industry standards. We just talked about 2 of them, which is key dip at 10 millimeters, also known as 3/8 inch. There is the blow distance, which is 1 7/8. And then we have let off, which is usually 1/8 inch. And so from that, we kind of have that as our North Star. And then we can dance back and forth and manipulate those as we want to make the piano play and repeat just right. And so that's the thing, is we need, at the very end of the day, we need enough jack escapement. Because that's really, if you break it down, that's what aftertouch is. It's the amount of travel after let off that jack is able to move out of the way and reset. If there's not enough of it, you're going to get that. You're going to get hammers that, you know, bobble and don't repeat. If there's too much of it, you'll get a weird spongy feel. So there's ditches on either side. And yes, that aftertouch triad.
There's a question. Would less blow distance mean less dynamic range?
No. That is true. The people that I've done that for did a lot of Baroque music. And so, yes, it didn't feel like they had as much dynamic range because they weren't looking for that. You know, the original harpsichords had 1 volume and they just kind of did that. And so that was more in line with what they were looking for.
Because when you use your soft pedal, that changes the blow distance on the entire piano, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Was there another question that I saw too?
How to get more jack escapement?
So that is aftertouch. How to get more aftertouch is basically it. And so that is, let's just say, I'm gonna move this out of the way since we're done with this guy. Feels good to be back in the Portland studio. I can kind of manipulate things. So right there, we want jack escapement. And we're going to go over this more on Wednesday, but basically we want that jack. It's not even working at all right now, by the way. We want that jack to escape. And the way we do that is 3 things: deeper key dip, more let off or less blow distance. It's kind of funny how that works. Less blow distance means more aftertouch. Deeper key dip means more aftertouch. And a wider let off, that's not the best term. A bigger let
Earlier,
off.
later let off, right?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, or earlier let off. All those things add to more aftertouch. And again, aftertouch is that amount of escapement.
I heard that Lang Lang, the pianist,
Yeah.
he tells his technician that he wants 1.25 inch blow distance so that he has more aftertouch. And I remember his technician was like, you're gonna lose power, right? Because you're not as much, And he's like, no, he's like, it doesn't matter. I just want more aftertouch. So he's like, don't worry about it.
That's interesting because
that's Lang Lang though. I got to see him in concert in September. So we got to meet with the Bechstein technicians and stuff. He's really picky. Like they do a lot of weird stuff just for him. I don't know. It was
the
cool.
funny thing is,
that much sense, but...
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's pretty interesting, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I know he's
that wouldn't, to be honest, that wouldn't lead to more aftertouch.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you're going to talk with these amazing pianists and they're going to say stuff like, yeah, I really like a lot of aftertouch. So really give me no dip and a really wide blow distance. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great.
That's exactly what his tech said, is exactly what you said, David. That's not actually what you're asking for, but I'll do it.
To get more let off, I think I saw a question. You would just screw the let off button downwards, so it's engaging the jack sooner. And what we're going to be doing is actually on Wednesday going through all the measurements, and then probably next week, assuming we can get that other grand action in here, Stacy. I don't know if we got a tracking number for that one, but we'll do the grand action probably next week. Clockwise, yes. Yes, Trinian. Were you going to say something, Stacey?
No, I was just looking at the tracking number. I was looking for when that action's coming because I know it's coming.
Wow. I felt like I did a lot of talking. Hopefully this was helpful and at least got to kind of see all of these parts and how they kind of fit together. And then again, what's involved in repinning each one of them and kind of resetting them. And again, on Wednesday, we're really going to go into manipulating regulation specs, because that's really where you get to learn everything. Is going first, maybe we start with the spec and then we go and veer off, because a lot of times we might not be able to get the spec we want. And I would say 99 out of 100 times we're not able to get just what we want. And so you have to make compromises. And that's what regulation is all about, is a lot of times it's a lot of jazz, if you will. It's kind of going and working around what you know is there to make everything actually function.
So for instance, part of that because, previous work on the piano has set it one way. And so you can't really reset everything. You don't have time to do that. You just kind of have to use what you have to get there.
Yeah, I would say there's three things if I had to guess. There's one is the geometry and design of the piano maybe being outdated to a point. So it can only get so far. Maybe the piano geometry was set for this 120-year-old upright for a shorter a shorter key dip, which a lot of these old uprights were designed for a shorter key dip. And so we're like, man, I want this to play like a modern Yamaha, which means I want to get a 10mm dip, which means I'm going to probably have to back up and cut and remove things from this hammer rest rail to get it so the blow distance can go just the right way.
Yeah,
and so a lot of times we're doing that. The other thing is, yes, you're right, we don't have enough time. So that's a big one. And the other thing is, just what the customer is looking for. They don't know what they want. That's a big one. They think they know what we want. And I've done it so many times where I give them what they thought they wanted and they don't like it.
Yeah,
So
it's a
very much
translation
be aware
issue.
of that and communicate, over communicate.
Yeah, this player piano that I've been working on has a key dip of 8. And
What is it?
8. 8 millimeters instead of 10.
Oh, 8 millimeters. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like it was all set at 8, and if I want to change it to 10, I'm going to have to change every one of the keys and the whole thing way it works. So I left it at 8. Let's
Yep.
let's go with what was working, and it seems to do just fine. But there's always room for improvement.
I've done that before too. So I mean, it's just kind of sometimes what you have to do. Be sure to submit questions and stuff like that, because usually at the end of the classes, I think there's new people here, but at the end of the classes, usually what we do is we have Q&A for more questions that are submitted to us.
I got some of your questions, so I'll put them on Wednesday. I'll just gather a bunch. I bet you we'll have more time. So
Yeah, Stacy, save mine for Friday because I will be at a jazz concert up in Michigan.
Lucky you, jazz
going
concert.
to see Samara Joy. So
okay, I'll save yours till Friday.
Perfect. Yeah, and just so people know that, like, usually on Fridays we're kind of batting cleanup, and the little residual questions and fun stuff like that is a lot of times Friday. All right. Think about regulation specifically with the uprights, and we'll kind of pick up where we left off. We're going to be working on this guy, and we'll probably start by setting it to spec, and then we'll experiment. And we'll take requests like, hey, make it do this, make it do that, what in order to do this, and we'll go from there. All right. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.